So Leo, thank you very much for being our guest today on this podcast show of Better Tech. And we hope to have a great conversation with you, and that could be useful for our audience. The journal conversation, the subject of the conversation is around finding how CTOs get ROI for their organizations, but obviously we can touch upon on various topics. So before we start off, how about Leo, you take a few moments and introduce yourself to our audience, and we can take stuff from there.
Sure, thank you, and thanks for having me. So Leo Barella, I am Chief Technology Officer at Takeda, and I have responsibilities across multiple, what we actually call shared services across the organization, starting from enterprise architecture. I actually own the cloud program and the execution of the cloud program at Takeda. Architecture is also responsible for application rationalization, setting standard, governance. I also manage a team that supports about 1,400 applications across Takeda. So I kind of own the application maintenance service along with database administration and testing. I also run the data program for IT, as well as I chair the Global Data Council at Takeda, which basically is defining the enterprise strategy for data. Mm-hmm. And I also manage a team that is called the Digital Products and DevOps, which is actually focused on the creation of services for capabilities such as mobile, web, RPA, virtual agents, and basically I serve the enterprise. So as different teams need this type of capability encapsulated into their solutions, and we actually get engaged to deliver this type of value.
So I guess it's a great introduction, and it seems like you are one of those experienced CTOs who have done all this kind of work all their lives, and it's pretty impressive CV. So before we start after that, I mean, there are many roles in an organization, the tech leadership roles, CTO, CIOs, VP of professional services, director of software development. So how a role of a CTO differentiates from the other roles in the general world, and particularly in your organization?
So to me, the CTO, the T in the CTO is not really a chief technology officer, but it's kind of more the chief transformation officer in a way. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel that my role is more to transform the organization to become more digitally connected. And then if we actually want to get into the definition of digital, which I think we will, I'll explain exactly what that means. But I see my role as introducing a different way of leveraging technology to redefine how we actually do or deliver products and services within my company, and quite frankly across healthcare. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, as you said, we'll talk more about digital. I mean, digital transformation is a buzzword, and digital transformation means different things to different people. So, we'll be happy to understand how you see digital transformation.
Yeah, so digital is one of these words that is exciting and confusing at the same time, where basically people don't quite actually apply the same definition. From my perspective, the word digital is actually used to define a new method of collecting information about a process in real time. So it's more of the acceleration of data collection to really understand how a process and or a service is actually performing. Mm-hmm. And that comes from the perspective of most people actually almost connect digital to mobile in some cases. Some other cases it's actually the collection of devices that basically collect information in real time. So for instance, in Industry 4.0, digital is actually really the instrumentation of sensors, right, in a production line to kind of really understand and measure how the product is basically moving from one station per se to the next. But Digital to me is also around customer experience and making sure that you are actually offering the light to your customers. So in a way, a digital program is really becoming more, rather than actually defining solutions from the inside out, or basically the company is thinking of how to actually produce services to their customers. Digital to me is flipping that perspective to kind of really let the customer really drive the definition of how your product should actually change and or adapt to different situations. So the definition of personas actually comes to mind, where basically you're trying to actually segment your clientele, and then defining services that are more customized and personalized, right, to your customers.
So if I just try to rephrase it or try to get your information on it, I mean, digitization has been in place for many decades now, and companies doing a lot of stuff they call digital, and they are digitizing information, and then all of this information was getting created in silos, and then digital transformation came in, and you started integrating a lot of this digital information. But I feel that you have taken it to a whole new different level, where a digital transformation that is used to serve an organization, you have really taken it to a level where you're saying that the entire digital transformation journey needs to be defined by your customer experience, and then you work backwards from there to create experience and digital transformation or digital assets or digital processes that eventually serve that particular customer need. Is this did I understand it correctly? Is this something?
Yeah. I feel that basically the start of digital transformation happened when networks and connectivity has become ubiquitous, right? So the fact that we actually have a phone, pretty much every person almost has a phone in their pocket, that actually is the ability to actually reach a consumer, no matter who you are, no matter what kind of service you're trying to actually, receive, being, getting into a cab, to ordering, your lunch, to, finding a doctor. So the phone basically, and the network, more than the device itself, the network itself actually has been the enabler of this digital transformation. The second thing has been, again, networks. So in manufacturing facilities now, they're all wirelessly connected. They're all connected. So every device, everything is connecting through the network. So the transformation itself, once you actually are connected to your customer through a phone, now all of a sudden you can actually switch into measurement, right? And so the measurement component is, how do your customers how do they interact with your product? How do they try to actually ask for your services? And obviously, a lot of information is being generated by the phone. What I am, who I'm with, where I'm going, what I've been. So that there is just a lot of behavioral information that now all of a sudden is helping anyone that basically has access to the information customize the services based on who you are, who your interests are, who your friends are. Now, again, there is also a lot of controversy in terms of, what information do I make available? Well, I think that this is actually the beautiful thing about technology, right? Because technically you can customize your experience to whatever level you would like. So basically, if you actually want for services to actually come to you, then you basically need to obviously reveal more and more about your digital identity. Mm-hmm. Versus if you don't care about it, or if you're actually more concerned about privacy, then basically you can actually scale down that level of information sharing about yourself. But then at that point, basically you're limiting yourself to the services that basically can be provided by your choices, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, it's kind of really what, the enabler of this digital transformation to me is the fact that basically everything is connected. And then there's actually a component of processing and customization of services that's kind of really more tied to the capacity and the computing power and the amount of information and big data that can actually be stored to now personalize the service based on who you are, the population you belong to, your interests, in other aspects that basically are more common to you compared to someone else.
So that's an interesting thing. And Haseeb, you can jump in anytime that you want. That's an interesting comment that you made, that the basis of a digital transformation is basically now because everything is connected. And I was reading somewhere, and probably on the IBM's blog, and they say that Now, what is beyond digital transformation? And they say that it's a cognitive transformation. So that is more an organization that is built around AI and machine learning. But the basis of that cognitive transformation is digital transformation. Unless and until you have a digital transformation in place, you cannot really go for that cognitive transformation. And essentially, the AI and machine learning are really now getting pace because the organizations are embracing more and more digital transformation. So I guess that's how it is. So in terms of the overall life cycle, do you feel that enterprises and large enterprises, they're really now at a stage where they feel and they have embraced this digital transformation and they have adopted it as a whole, or we are still in the early stages of digital transformation? And how do you feel about the industry in general, especially healthcare in particular?
I feel that
and just to add to that, what Umair just said about the AI and machine learning. So we have also seen that there is a push right towards like AI and machine learning and cognitive transformation, as Umair mentioned, in various organizations. However, in some cases, I mean, the processes in the enterprise and the data, which is sort of the basis of all this processing, is lacking in many of the cases, I would say. So, I mean, just to add to that, where do you see that going in parallel?
I mean, I kind of really feel that, this transformation is fundamentally changing how we actually live our lives. So it's that drastic, right? And again, it's probably not now, maybe not in the next 5 years, but definitely in the next 10 years, we're actually going to start to understand exactly how profound the application of machine learning and AI is going to be in our lives. So for instance, in the medical field, the example that I always use is if you're actually going to the doctor, you're basically relying on his education, his intuition, his experience, right, to kind of, diagnose more or less what he sees in that 5 to 10 minutes, right? And then he basically delivers some sort of a guess as to what you have, the kind of medicine that might actually be able to actually cure what he perceived that you have, but it's not empirical. So it's highly it's this guesswork that basically is indeed funded on the experience, intuition, and and the education of the doctor. If you're actually now switching into machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's a lot more empirical. Obviously, it requires a lot more data. So as in, the more you actually instrument an individual with devices, I mean, I have plenty of devices. I have a ring that basically detects my heart rate for 24/7. I have straps for my watch that basically are detecting changing in my sweat, changing in my fat body composition throughout the day, and there are many more devices that basically I've been using throughout my life. I can actually put on a 24/7 EKG device, and these are all devices that now actually cost less than $50, right? So the fact that we can actually generate this amount of data, this is actually just for healthcare, right? It's completely transforming the role of the doctor, because quite frankly, when I'm actually showing up at my doctor and they actually put me on a scale and they measure my weight with my clothes on and whatever, right? And then they actually estimate more or less my BMI. I show up and say, I have about 12 years worth of history of my weight daily. In the morning, before I work out, after I work out, before I go to sleep. So I'm not sure exactly how this one data point can actually really give you any idea.
You have your steps, you have your exercise minutes, you have your heart rate, you have your sleeping heart rate, resting heart rate, every single thing.
Yeah, so basically, if you're actually looking at the role of the doctor, right, and any other, any other really profession, right, will become obsolete almost because, frankly, the part in which, for instance, we have a data program at Takeda. And I've been violently opposed to actually calling the data program a data and analytics program. I don't believe in analytics actually being the art of an individual reading a chart, making a decision. There are so many elements in that decision that basically are faulty, including the experience and education of that individual that makes the decision, versus when you actually can rely on a massive amount of data. Now all of a sudden you actually are starting to actually become a lot more empirical about the decision, right? Now, obviously, the models need to be trained and they need to actually be coded by an individual. So basically there are choices of what information will you use to actually make a decision. But ultimately, an AI or a machine learning algorithm will make a mistake, but it will learn from the mistake. And by the way, that is actually broadcasted across any sort of algorithm that has ever existed to kind of, autocorrect itself. The example that I always use, and I know that I'm kind of, going long here, but Tesla, right, and the autopilot. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly what your driving record is, right? My driving record is okay. I like to actually speed. I've not had too many accidents, but I do know now actually how to detect when the road is icy. I know exactly how to drive when the road is wet. But my kids are going to have to go through the same exact steps of learning that you and I always had when you actually push on the brakes and the car is actually going straight on ice, right? Now, the beautiful thing about AI and the problem there is the fact that basically I cannot tell my kids exactly what it feels like to auto skid. They need to feel it. The thing with AI is the fact that basically once the single first car basically skids on ice, it learns, and every other car that basically has that capability has learned in that 1 second. So that to me is really the power of AI and machine learning, the fact that basically, it's ubiquitous and it's immediate. And so the learning globally, right, will basically increase exponentially in areas in which basically humankind, right, just based on our limitation of communication via verbal or written, is just unparalleled, right? And so we
one large brain.
Yeah, no, it's to me it's the connectivity component, and it's how transferable that experience will become through machine learning algorithms and AI, right?
So just on a tangent, do you believe that Skynet is going to happen?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Do I believe that? So I'm sorry. Can you actually repeat the question?
So the Skynet from the Terminator, is it going?
Well, I'm not sure about the Skynet. No, I'm not sure about Skynet. Skynet to me is fiction, right? But what I'm saying is that the artificial intelligence will definitely play a huge role in how we will apply this digital foundation. So to me, is the fact that we're actually collecting so much data is just the beginning of the feeding of a model, right? So the fact that we basically have technically unlimited storage now, right? It will allow us to kind of really, it's kind of really a matter of compute power now, and then I think we're going to be accelerating. But I don't think that I think that humans will actually be smarter than. And I believe that basically everything around AI and machine learning is all done for good reasons, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of distance to cover before we get to artificial general intelligence. Yeah. Okay, so great. So now that we understand the digital transformation and what it takes to create one, let's change gears and take the conversation towards the ROI part. So, organizations go through the digital transformation because they want to get a certain ROI, or also as a role as a CTO, you are responsible for making this happen. So talk to us more about how your role as a CTO involves in bringing an ROI to the company, or how you use technology. I mean, many times you're just doing technology for the sake of technology when it comes to a low level, but at your level, every technological decision needs to bring in an ROI. So what kind of a structure, what kind of an organization, what kind of parameters you should be thinking while making technology decisions as a CTO, that it can really position you well to bring an ROI to your enterprise?
Yeah, so it's both a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. The top-down approach is having a clear understanding of what the pretty much the mission and the vision of the company is really driving to, right? So that kind of really creates the definition of principles of what value to an organization really is. There has to be maturity in how you actually create a portfolio of programs and or products, lately. But that kind of really defines more or less we actually define the value streams of the organization. So we actually have processes or top 10 processes that basically make our organization successful. Mm-hmm. We try to actually optimize these processes best we can using lean type of an approach, right? And kind of understanding the value add, non-value add components of the process. And then we actually start to apply the idea of, if this is actually our core process, let's actually start to analyze what data is the process using, right, end to end. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden we start to break up from a data-centric perspective the different systems and the different data repositories, the different reports, the different data that we buy or that we interface. And so you actually start to break up that process into its level of complexity of technology, data, and then you actually get into data integrity, data lineage, data quality. And all of these actually become extremely expensive when you don't actually have a very good transfer of information from one component to the process to the next. Once you basically actually have that end-to-end understanding of the cost of your process, right, now all of a sudden you can actually start to refine it into how do you actually optimize the process, so that basically the unit cost of whatever you're trying to do is actually going to be less because of the fact that you're reducing the complexity. So the story is you go from the value stream to the process to the technology complexity, and then the most important component of being able to actually drive change through a baselining process is actually knowing your total cost of ownership, right? So, and the total cost of ownership is not just about an application or a system, but indeed it's actually the cost of ownership to actually run a process. Now, in its individual components, like the application level, we do try to actually come up with a total cost of ownership. And as you know, if you actually try to have a bunch of technologies define the total cost of ownership of an application, you'll never get over it, because every technologist is actually focused on actually making the total cost of ownership precise and exact, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So we kind of break up the total cost of ownership in about 5 different stages. So the first stage is actually the cost of implementation of a solution or a technology. And then there are basically some steady state categories. One is actually really the kind of like the application cost, so being the software licenses, the software maintenance, the hosting cost. Then you actually have costs that basically are more related to the changes that you actually apply to the application itself. So it's not the software maintenance, but it's more about the maintenance of the application itself. So now that I actually bought the application, how much does it actually cost me to actually keep it alive, keep it going, like the system upgrades, the application upgrades, basically the little things that you need to actually do to keep the application running. The third category is kind of really more around projects. So now, what are the projects that basically are using my technology or application? It can actually be, again, the value stream cost, but every time I'm actually spending money to make configuration changes to the app, adding views or creating reports or whatever, that's all cost that I'm actually keep adding to the application and the asset. So these three categories, again, the software cost, the kind of like the maintenance cost for for the team, and then eventually the configuration changes or the upgrade cost. And the last component is actually really the retirement cost. If you were to retire this application, how many other applications do you need to upgrade? Or where will I actually move this process to, and what changes do I need to actually make to these systems in order for me to eliminate the application? So we kind of have all of that very well defined for every application we have, which makes us very agile when we're actually trying to calculate really the cost of the total cost of process, and actually what we define as the unit cost. I can actually go into unit cost calculations, but basically the fundamental KPI of total cost of ownership and ROI to us is the unit cost. So basically, if I actually have the total cost of an application, and I now actually try to figure out exactly how is this application used. Okay, the application is actually used to deliver whatever 1,000 vials of vaccine. So you can actually start to measure some value KPIs, right? That basically the application is helping. And you can actually start to divide. If I'm delivering 10 million vials a day, right? And my application is costing X, then the added cost to the product or the net product is pennies, right? So basically, I can actually continue to support the application because the value that it delivers is great. Versus other application where you might be spending $1 million and you only have 10 users for this application using it, and because no one even knows about the application anymore or was not kind of really served across the enterprise. And so there are basically decisions you can actually make on unit cost that they basically drive your ability to rationalize or further invest in communication to kind of expand the usage of the application itself.
This is I must have to say, this has been one of the most comprehensive answers I've ever got on related to this question, that how you're taking right from the process and system and really broken it down to, and I'm really amazed to see that if within your organization you are doing measurement at every particular level so that you can really understand that. Now, this takes me to a question that you have described the way you can go really from a process cost to a unit cost and then figure out the ROI. You feel in terms of the organizational structure or the way your sub-org has been set up and the people or the hierarchy needs to be set up in a certain way, and there needs to be a certain trust between groups and processes, groups and people among themselves to make sure that you really measure it correctly, you really get to that level instead of going through the red tape and bureaucracy. I mean, how the org should we really be setting up, and what should be the confidence and the softest things that you need around to make such thing happen?
Yeah, so it's kind of multidimensional, right? So we basically have 3 different groups of actors, I guess, in this process. One is actually the application owner. Mm-hmm. The application owner is someone that basically knows about the application and the cost. So basically, it's the person that basically is feeding the TCO model, right? And obviously, they're responsible for the health of the application and knowing where the application is being used. So that's actually one role. The second role is kind of more of the process owner, right? So the people that now actually know how to actually go from A through Z. Fact is, in a global company, some of these processes, right, while you might actually define the perfect process, that process actually takes on a different articulation when you actually are going to different countries. So you might actually have the definition of what this is actually what the process should be, but then if you're actually going to different countries, they still kind of follow more or less the same process, but they don't use the same systems. They skip a step, they add a step, so there are articulations that basically are not the same. The third most important component is actually more about looking at all of this from a data perspective, because data, quite frankly, at least our learning is that the more you actually are in control of the definition of data, right? And basically, we have a definition of basically 26 different data entities or data domain, as we call them, across Takeda that defines basically the entire data landscape at the company. We govern 10 of them. We don't govern all 26, but just with the 10 that we actually govern, basically we actually have a good ability to kind of understand more or less what are the processes that are affected, what are the systems that are affected, and with that basically creates a good ecosystem of controls to basically start to actually structure a discussion around what do we need to optimize, what systems don't we need, how can we actually organize the data better. How can we actually learn from different regions, right? What is the best implementation of the process? So the process optimization actually happens in communities, right? So we have a very strong network of communities around data, around process, not necessarily around systems because, everyone is kind of, different, but basically definitely data and process is key.
I think I got my answers, and I think you're pretty well placed. If you want to say something.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that we are moving towards like the role of CTO, and Umair has touched upon that. So, I mean, we have really seen that there are primarily two types of companies, as we say. First one are the services company, which basically provide services. For example, telcos and sort of other companies provide services to their customers. The other one is the product companies, where they have like a product and then they offer this product to their customers. Now, CTO role is primarily in my experience, geared more towards, product companies, where, product companies has a specific title for a CTO and people vouch for it, or, they proudly sort of say that. In services company, that sort of role is not as glamorized as like other executives. So in your experience, what have you seen the difference between the two? Is a CTO role actually applicable to a services company? How do you think about it?
Yeah, so to me, a product company is a services company as well. And if you think of a product as something that you actually sell and become a service, I think it's the same thing. Now, I do feel that the CTO part of the services company is probably more focused on on the data and the digital aspects of how the service is actually being portrayed through their customers. I think there is a component of being ubiquitous around sharing experiences. Like we're actually talking about consulting companies, right? I've been part of a few consulting companies as well. And the focus of the CTO in this case is more around, making sure that basically your people are extremely effective. So there are a lot of technologies like, document management, knowledge management, and the ability to kind of, craft a presentation or find experiences that some other consultant has had in a similar client in a similar situation, and giving you basically a product that is almost ready to actually be customized just for your specific client. That to me is huge value, right? So the role of the CTO really doesn't change between the two. Now, obviously, in product companies, it's more visible in a way because you can actually touch it. In services company, I think it's actually more increased revenue, and also there is a huge component of intelligence, right, on the customers and the people that you're actually about to visit. So to me, is when I was working for one of the consulting firms, I was actually working in their internal IT department, and then the focus was indeed around customer intelligence, right? So kind of knowing your customer before you actually interface with them, knowing and understanding what they actually want to buy. Now again, from a services company, other services, if you're actually talking about cabs, and so I don't know exactly by what the definition of services is kind of loose for me, but yeah. So I think that the role of the CTO, more or less, I think it's about the same. So to me, again, where T is more of a transformation component, right? Kind of always thinking about 1-2 steps ahead of the market. I think the role of the CTO is also one that basically learns from different industries. So I never actually look at the pharmaceutical industry, for instance, now, right, as the only industry that I can actually learn from. As a matter of fact, I don't want to learn from my peers because, quite frankly, it will be an incremental learning. We're all trying to actually do the same thing, So I much prefer to actually start to look at other companies, right? So what can I learn again from a car manufacturing company, or what can I learn from SpaceX, right? So it does not matter. So I think that applied technology, and especially applied data, is really transformational, and that's what the role of the CTO is.
Right. And just to follow up to that, we have seen there are various groups in any organization or various business units. And so do you think that there is like a possibility of having each unit or each group having its own CTO, and then they basically work together to achieve the overall goal in terms of technology for the company or the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I actually had, clones of myself, across the organization to be able to kind of capture really what the business really wants. From my perspective, the role of the corporate CTO, right, is kind of really more about creating a set of services that can actually be commoditized across the enterprise. But then if you actually have different CTOs in the different parts of the organization, of course, they're a lot more specialized in that specific segment of, knowledge, right, and talent. A pharmaceutical company basically is made up of more or less is 3 organizations. One is the research and development. So research and development are 2 completely distinct, industries, right? Then you actually have the manufacturing component, right? Manufacturing is huge. There's a lot of engineering. It's fascinating, how we actually put together manufacturing facility, right? To kind of develop a pharmaceutical product, like any other manufacturing facility, being shoes or being cars, right? It doesn't matter. And then you basically have the sales component. Now, the sales component in our case is actually very different. Sales and marketing, we don't market necessarily. Well, we do actually have some advertising on TV, but there is a whole. So we're kind of there is a whole logistics industry, right? For that we actually put together to kind of distribute our products. And then obviously there is kind of like this experience of customer. Then the customer, we actually call it the patient. That obviously is patient interaction is not something that usually a pharmaceutical company does. I mean, how many times have you picked up the phone and called the pharmaceutical company that made the product that you're ingesting? Not too many people do. You call your doctor, right? So we try to actually cater to doctors and hospitals, of course, and key opinion leaders, as we call them. So these are actually people that kind of know about a specific illness, right? And then basically they can speak about our product in a large audience to basically advertise the value that we deliver.
Guys, just to make sure that we keep this podcast within certain limits, I'll just take the liberty to ask the last question related to the podcast, and which is that how do you see the role of a CTO getting evolved in the next decade or so?
Well, the CTO has always been a role in evolution, right? I don't feel that basically the role of the CTO 15 years ago is the same as now. I feel that basically the next 10 years are going to be mostly focused on data. Mm-hmm. And kind of really trying to kind of really understand exactly what to do with data. So the data to me was kind of really more of a second thought, versus now I think is actually going to become more of the spotlight. So as in people now are starting to understand that basically if you have a digital program with a weak data program, you basically are adding complexity. You're not really delivering a lot of value. If you actually have a data program and then you leverage basically your data platform, as we call it, right, to basically deliver digital products that are connected to the platform, then eventually you're infinitely scalable. The model that basically we try to actually follow are basically of digital data native companies, right? Such as Facebook or Amazon, or these are all companies that basically have started being digital natives, but their strategy is all revolving around data. So the data is the center, and then they eventually continue to deliver a product based on the data that they know. But they're solely focused on the data about their customer. And then the more information they know about their customers, the more they know how to actually deliver a product that basically are going to be in line with what their customer want. Sure. So it's kind of like the outside thinking again.
Yeah, I guess. So the next 10 years is around data and stuff that you can get out of.
In real time. So I can really feel that there is a component of collaboration. I don't believe that basically companies will, the brick walls type of thing, where basically it's brick and mortar and basically you know exactly what your company is because you can actually visit the different buildings, is completely disintegrating, where even the architecture of microservices and APIs, right, is kind of really inviting us to collaborate in real time and really delivering values by, picking the component of your process, right, you can actually outsource and or leverage externally, especially including analytics. I think that there's going to be a much more specialized industry for analytics based on, again, different industries, right, and different components of the value chain, where basically a company will specialize specifically on the AI and machine learning of that specific part of the process. And it'll be far more inexpensive and affordable to leverage the service rather than actually trying to build that AI yourself, right? So basically, I think the specialization of service is going to become a lot more ubiquitous. And so the role of the CTO, to me, will evolve into being a broker of all these services and being able to actually streamline these capabilities that basically external vendors will actually offer to produce your own value chain.
So CTO will be a broker in the next decade.
I think it's going to be a broker of microservices in a way, right? So but focus still on basically retaining the data as basically your core asset. Yeah.
So Leo, thank you very much for giving us all this insightful discussion, and I'm sure our audience will enjoy a lot about that, and I can thank you enough.